Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. No matter where you listen to this show, I think there is one problem that drives us all insane, with technology both at home and equally in the office. Because we all have 20 plus websites and apps at home, and we're all expected to remember the password. And when we return to the office, we're expected to remember even more. And just to complicate matters even further, they should all be unique, have uppercase letters, lowercase letters, symbols, and even numbers. But let's say you are one of the good guys that follows all the rules to the letter. But then the platform you use, such as Equifax, gets hacked and tells the world your password anyway. I think we can all admit that the system is flawed. But what is the future of passwords? Is it biometrics, like we unlock our phones now with our faces? Or is it password safes or something else? Today I invited Sandor Palfy onto the show, and he's the CTO of Identity and Access Management at LogMeIn. And we're going to discuss the future of password security and how artificial intelligence and machine learning are, yes, increasingly being used by cyber attackers, but how we can protect against AI-powered security threats. Additionally, I also want to find out more about how new LastPass research discovered that while individuals and businesses are facing major global cybersecurity threats, people don't seem to be changing their password behaviours. So I want to hear more about these findings and the implications on the current password landscape. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Budapest so we can speak with Sandor Palfy, the CTO of Identity and Access Management at LogMeIn. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Sandor. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure, and thank you for inviting me, Neil. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of LastPass, which is one of the most popular and versatile password managers out there. And at LastPass, I run engineering and technology. My job is pretty simple. I need to make sure that LastPass is secure, it's reliable, it's easy to use, and that we also invest in future technologies and exploring what's beyond passwords. Prior to this role, I ran the corporate IT and security for our parent company, which is called LogMeIn. So I was literally in the shoes of our customers, IT and security leads, trying to protect our employees from online threats.
Excellent. Now, I do talk about many, many different tech topics across multiple industries every single day on this podcast. But today, I want to tackle something that will affect every single person listening, and that is passwords. I mean, for years, the prediction has been that biometric authentication is going to eliminate passwords forever. And yet we are seeing biometrics going mainstream and becoming a convenient authentication method, especially on our smartphones. But will we soon see the end of passwords and passcodes, or is it still a long way off?
That's a very interesting question. Because on one hand, biometrics are everywhere. They work really well, especially on personal devices like mobile phones. But on the other hand, what we are seeing is that people have more and more passwords every year. Even the latest phones with advanced biometrics ask for a PIN code, and most apps that you install still require email and password, which is a real pain, especially on the mobile phone. I think that the biggest reason for this is security. When your password gets compromised, you can simply go and change it, and hopefully set a more secure one. But if your fingerprint or your face data is compromised, there's not a lot of things you can do. I would imagine it would be pretty painful to change your fingerprints, for example. So for these reasons, biometrics is mainly used as gatekeepers. You can enter the building using your biometrics, or you can log into your phone or modern laptops with fingerprint readers. But in all these cases, your biometric data is stored locally on that specific device that you try to access to. And this makes it very hard to use biometrics across devices and applications that you want to access on your mobile phone or your desktop or on your web. For example, if you want to order pizza on your app, but sometimes you want to order the pizza from the same provider through their website, you will need to revert back to passwords, as that's the only thing that works in all these environments. So there are a few interesting developments that are coming through. For example, the web authentication protocol that's supported by Microsoft and Google, and it aims to provide biometric authentication option for websites. And this is super exciting, but right now it's very hard to predict how fast it's going to happen.
Well, I was talking to someone a couple of days ago about the increase in contractors in companies, and especially project managers, etc., and project resources. It's increasing risks of insider threats, and that's a whole industry on its own. But I'm curious, what is by far the biggest risk to online security of individuals and organisations that you're coming across?
So the irony here is that even though there's literally an arms race between attackers and defenders with more and more sophisticated hacking methods and billions of dollars spent on protection, the primary source of breaches is still the plain old stolen or otherwise compromised credentials. If you look at, for example, the Verizon breach report that they release every year, it's clear that credentials are still the number one way for attackers to get into your organization. And it's the usual suspects. It's weak and guessable passwords. It's the same as passwords used across different apps or websites, or people just don't protect their computers from malware, and then this malware can listen into your keyboard and steal passwords that way. What surprises me is that people are aware of this threat, but they don't do much to protect themselves. We did a recent research called The Psychology of Passwords, and one of the most shocking revelations was that while 90% of the respondents well understood the risk of using the same passwords across multiple sites, half of them still did it. They still use the same weak passwords across the sites, and of course, if one of those gets breached, then all of their other accounts can be accessed by these attackers. And even worse, half of these respondents said that they don't change their passwords even though they hear about the breach of an account that they use. I personally believe that part of this behavior is that people simply have too many accounts to manage, too many credentials to manage, and at the same time, they are not aware of the tools that would help them. But I hope that your podcast will help changing this.
I hope so too, because I did spend 20 years in IT, and I've seen so many people with the password 12345 or PA55 word. But I mean, there's just a few things there. But like you said also about you shouldn't use the same password on multiple sites. But the reality is that many of us have got 30, 40, 50 different accounts out there that we might use periodically maybe, but over a period of months. And it's not really practical to use a different password for every single one. So how can listeners better protect themselves? Are there any tips or tools that you can recommend or share with me today?
Absolutely. And it's interesting that we think about passwords as something that's important for adults and for companies, which is true. I have 4 major things that I recommend to everyone who asks this question. The first one is that you should just forget about remembering all these passwords. As you mentioned, people have dozens of credentials now. You simply can't remember those. Use some tool like a password manager and generate these passwords as long as these websites allow, like 20 characters long, completely random passwords for each website and apps that you use. This might sound scary a little bit, but believe me, like these tools are built for this, and they make actually very easy to secure these sites. And obviously, change the passwords when a site that you use get breached. For example, Twitter just issued a statement and asked their users to change their passwords. Password managers, again, can make this very simple. LastPass, for example, can replace your Twitter password with a single click of a button. The second tip is use two-factor authentication for all the important accounts, your email accounts, your iCloud or your Windows account, and obviously for your password manager. Because even if your main password or master password gets somehow compromised, the second factor can still prevent an attacker to get into your account. The third one is an obvious one. Keep your operating system and software and AV up to date. It's people keep forgetting how important it is, but that's probably the second most frequent way for attackers to get in. And the fourth one is a little known trick, but it has a huge impact. And I'm not sure if your listeners are aware, but both macOS and Windows have an option called standard users. These are just like regular user accounts on these operating systems. But with these standard users, you can't directly install software or change system settings. This also means that most malware will not work because they try to hide themselves, and without the ability to change the system settings, it just won't work. This is a simple trick, and I highly recommend your listeners to use a standard user account for the day-to-day work, for web browsing, for gaming, and so on, and elevating to a more privileged account only when you want to install something.
That's fantastic advice. I must admit, it's a simple trick, but something I've not actually thought about before. But if we do assume that everyone listening puts your advice into practice, then we get to the next level where cyber attackers can still be one step ahead by using artificial intelligence and machine learning technology. So can you tell me more about that emerging threat as well, and the constant battle between the good guys and the bad guys using the same technology?
Absolutely. And this ties back to this research that we did, where 50% of the users said that they use this mental model for generating secure passwords and they don't believe that it's guessable. Well, AI can guess those now. Last year, researchers came up with a way to use AI to learn these password schemes. And what they did is that they trained their machine learning algorithm with tens of millions of passwords, previously exposed passwords. And then they combined the output of their algorithm with existing password cracking tools. And what they found is that they were able to guess 50% of an unrelated password list from a different breach. So AI literally is capable of guessing these password schemes. And I think most of us have these mental method to generate these passwords, like concatenating a couple of words together and do the lead speak, right? Like replacing A's with 4s and O's with 0s. And these used to work in isolation. But when you look at 100 million stolen passwords that is used to train an AI, chances are high that at least a few thousand other people had the very same secret method for creating passwords. Machines are going to find those and exploit those. So you ask, like, how can people protect themselves? And some of these cases, AIs just exploit human weaknesses. For example, when people try to come up with secure passwords on their own. And what you can do is just eliminate that threat. In the case of passwords specifically, as for protecting against these threats, specifically against the password threats posed by machine learning, the easiest way is to eliminate the human factor. You should just stop thinking about these passwords or coming up with your own secret methods and just use plain, long, random passwords that, for example, a password generator can create for you, because no machine learning algorithm can guess completely random passwords. And of course, the usual best practices like using two-factor authentication and different credentials for each site also apply to this.
Now, for many people listening that do have lots and lots of passwords there, they'll find things like password safes intimidating and think that they just add pain points. But many of them are incredibly easy to use. So could you tell me a little bit more about LastPass and bust a few myths there on how it is so easy to use, and also what makes it unique from other solutions out there?
So yes, as you said, there are plenty of solutions people can choose from, and everyone should choose that works the best for them. What I think LastPass stands out are three things. First of all, that it works really well on every scale. We have lots of users, millions of individual users. We have lots of families using it. We have small teams, small companies using it. And we have large enterprises with tens of thousands of users using it. It is very simple and it just works. And in fact, many companies adopted LastPass because their employees use it first for their private accounts, and then they told and recommended it to their IT teams. And we heard about stories about the other direction, where people who were enrolled into LastPass through their company brought it home and shared it with their family and used it for their private accounts. The other thing is that I believe we are the only commercial solution that offers synchronization across all your devices. One of the problems were with early password managers that they worked on only on a single device. But today, people use different laptops and different mobile phones and different browsers. LastPass is able to synchronize all your passwords across all these devices on all platforms, regardless if it's Windows or iOS or Macs. And the third one is, I think that's probably the most important one in my mind, is innovation. We're constantly looking for novel ways to improve our user experience. For example, we have an alpha version out there called LastPass Connect, which can securely lock and unlock your computers as you walk around your home or your office. It's pretty cool and early adopters love it. And we're also actively researching, of course, the biometrics and all the other methods that will eventually remove the master password or eliminate the need of the master password. We're looking at blockchain as well and the next generation of identity solutions and constantly working on making our product more secure and easier to use.
So I've worked with a lot of people in technology who are well educated and fully aware of the solutions like this, but they don't use it because of the inconvenience factor. And yet, if you actually take a look under the hood, these things are not inconvenient at all and very often make your life much simpler. I mean, can you expand on that at all? Is that something that you found?
Yes, and this was something that puzzled us as well, because what our research found is that people are aware of the problem of weak passwords, but they still don't do much with it. And our theory is that people believe that it's a lot of hassle to use these tools like password managers. What we found, though, is that once you start using them, you realize that it not just makes you a lot more secure online because it can automatically generate your passwords or replace your passwords, but it will also make it a lot easier to use these various apps and services because it automatically fills out your passwords. What these tools do is that if you remember that one single password, your master passwords, it will remove the burden, the mental burden of remembering of your old other credentials and accounts that you use. And they're just automatically going to fill it out for you. So at the end, using password managers will not only make you more secure online, but will also make your life easier and will make you more efficient because you won't need to remember all those credentials and passwords.
Now, there could be somebody on their way to work now or walking their dog or in the gym shouting down at their headphones. Is, of course, what happens if all your passwords are stored in one location or one password safe? What happens if that safe suffers a breach or attack? Do they then get access to all your passwords?
Well, that's a very well-known problem. Like, should you put all your eggs into the same basket, right? There is some risk. Of course, there is some risk with that. But our experience says that it's still a lot better than the alternative, which is either using weak passwords or using the same passwords for every website, or maybe storing these passwords in an Excel sheet. We do what every security company is doing is we apply multiple layers of protections. We have a very successful bug bounty program, but the strongest element of our defense is our zero-knowledge approach. This simply means that all the encrypting of your stored credentials always happen on the client side with your master password as the key. Given that we never store your master password, we, like our own employees or a potential attacker, wouldn't be able to decrypt your vault even in the case of a breach. If you use a strong master passwords, you should be protected.
So for anyone listening anywhere in the world, what is the one piece of advice that you want them to take away from our conversation today?
So my mantra is that maintaining is always cheaper than fixing, whether it's your car, your home, your health, or your digital identity. I suggest your listeners to take these online threats very seriously because people often underestimate the cost of an identity theft, which usually starts with an account breach, but it's actually a lot of hassle and a lot of work recovering from that. And if you put a little effort into your password hygiene, you can prevent that. And I am a parent, and I would say that it's very important to talk to your kids too, because they are targeted as well. So you need to teach them about these best practices, and you need to help them staying safe online.
Well, there are so many talking points that we've raised today. So for anyone listening, can you remind them of where they can find you online and also contact your team if they've got any questions about our conversation today?
Absolutely. So our product is on LastPass.com, and it's free for individual users. So there's no risk. It's not a trial. There's no risk trying it out and using it. It makes life simpler, and it's going to make you a lot more secure. So I suggest to visit LastPass.com if you would like to learn more and try it out.
Excellent. Well, a huge thank you for coming on today. One of the things that I love about what you mentioned in the show there was people need to stop thinking that they must remember all the passwords and use a tech-based solution to do it for them and secure it, lock it down and have two-factor authentication. These are simple steps that people are not doing, and I think you've raised so many great talking points, and a big thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for inviting me.
I genuinely enjoyed today's conversation. I hope you did too. I mean, artificial intelligence is increasingly being used by cyber attackers. But the big takeaway is research has uncovered ways hackers use machine learning to figure out patterns people use to create their passwords. But Sandor offered really invaluable information on how we can better protect ourselves against AI-powered security threats, but we do need to change our password behaviours. But over to you, did any elements of today's conversation resonate with you? As always, let me know by emailing me at techblogwriter@outlook.com or tweeting me at Neil C. Hughes. But I'm afraid that's it for today's episode. I look forward to seeing you all again tomorrow, bright and early. But until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.